Hello, my name is Stefan Senna. This is my channel, What Was Seen, and this is episode 2, I believe, on hearing voices of my YouTube channel. Now, the first episode on hearing voices covers my experience when I was rock climbing and a voice told me what to do, which ended up most likely saving my life. This episode is going to talk about when that voice told me which car to buy, or at least that I would find the car that I was seeking. These two episodes are in high contrast because one, the voice appears to basically save my life, which seems like, well, that seems like a reasonable thing. Maybe God or the universe, wanted you around a little longer, and so it spoke to you. But the second circumstance was not life altering in that sense, and it was seemingly sort of a benign experience. I don't know. It was just like, how important is finding a car to drive to the universe? Evidently, it was of some importance, and we'll get into that. So anyway, about, let's see, I think it was 2015, I had purchased a Honda, and it was a great little car, but unfortunately, I had parked it up on Mount Hood during the snowy winter, and unbeknownst to me, the mechanic had put water in the engine instead of antifreeze, and the engine block cracked. So that car, as you can imagine, started running strangely, and I sold it. So then I needed a new car. Well, I did what most people do in that situation. I started looking on Craigslist and other situations looking for a car. Now, I had been using my pickup truck for work as a carpenter, but it used a lot of gas, and even with its new engine, it still does. My mechanic, I asked him once, I said, how can I get my truck to get better gas mileage? And he said, well, that's really simple. You just don't ever turn it on. And so I've learned that even that new engine that's in it is only going to get so much miles per gallon. So I had thought of the idea and started implementing using my car, that little Honda that I had, to put all my tools in and go back and forth to work with. And if I needed a lot of materials delivered, which is normal, I would just have them delivered. I wouldn't pick them up myself. And I would just subtract the normal, I would just do the math so it worked out good for my clients and myself. And it wasn't any big deal. But I no longer had to haul a bunch of material around. It would just be delivered, and then I would install it. Anyway, I knew I needed a car, obviously, and so I rented a car. This is in the middle of the winter, and luckily, car rentals were cheap at that time. It was only $20 per day, and I didn't mind paying. I thought, well, I'll find a car in a week or so. And fortunately, I had just been hired to renovate an entire house, and it had been paid a significant amount of money up front to start that renovation. And so I had money to buy a car. So I looked on Craigslist. I always looked for a car that was for sale by the owner, somebody who had owned the car, who had had experience with it, who had possibly records for what maintenance they did on the car, and a car that wasn't brand new, something that was maybe 3 or 4 years old, And so you'd save a little bit of money while the car didn't have too much mileage on it. But as the days turned into weeks, I just couldn't find a car. I researched Hondas, Toyotas, Subarus, and I looked at BMWs and some other cars. And I just couldn't find the right car. And I was getting kind of frustrated. And one particular day, after searching for about 6 weeks, one particular day I decided, I'm just sort of sick of looking, and now keep in mind, I had never looked at dealerships. I had only looked for sale by owner in trade online magazines or Craigslist. And so I hadn't looked at dealerships. I don't want to deal with a salesperson. And so I looked and looked and looked, and out of my frustration, I was about to give up. And I remember distinctly, I was in my bedroom, and a voice spoke to me in my head. Just like that voice that spoke to me in my head when I was on that mountainside, and a boulder was headed towards my head. It told me what to do. And what this voice said very clearly, very calmly, very confidently, said, "Tonight you'll be sitting in bed, open up your laptop, and you'll find your car." Now, when I heard this voice, I just thought, what the hell is that? It was like somebody was in the room and they just spoke. Like they somehow miraculously knew I was going to find my car at midnight by opening up my website or my laptop and finding it. Anyway, I just sort of didn't think about it. I forgot about the voice and went on with my day. That was probably around 11 or noon. And, I went to work or whatever I did. I don't remember. Took my kid to school, picked him up, cooked dinner, all that other stuff. And that night, I like many nights, I watched a movie and, I was gonna go to sleep. Well, I thought, before I go to sleep, darn it, I'll just look on Craigslist one more time for a car. I really didn't want to, but I decided now I didn't remember that voice from earlier. So I sat on my bed, I opened up my laptop, and and the voice said, "You'll sit on your bed, open up your laptop at midnight and find your car." So it was specific about the time. So anyway, I hadn't thought about any of that or what time it was. I just thought, I'll just look one more time. I sat on my bed, I opened up my laptop, I opened up the Craigslist website. But this time, I thought, instead of choosing for sale by owner, I chose either dealership or for sale by owner. And so what that did is it showed me advertisements from not only for sale by owner, people selling their own car, but dealerships. And the first or second dealership image that came up was this dealership called Silverline Auto. Now, I'd never heard of this dealership before, and so I looked on their website, and didn't look like a very large dealership, but I liked the name, Silverline Auto. So I scrolled through their website pages and looked at their different cars. They all looked very clean and nice. And suddenly, on this one page, I came upon this particular car. And I thought, gosh, that's a really cool looking car. I had never seen that car before. I'd never even heard of the model before. I had done searches under every type of Subaru, Honda, Toyota, and the like, and had never come across the name of this model, which was Venza. And it's the car that I drove here in. I've had that car for, I guess, 11 years now, and it's served me spectacularly well. But as soon as I saw this car on their website, it just sort of struck a nerve. I just thought, that's a cool car. I'd never seen it before. So I got online, I connected to their website, and then I looked more closely at the car that they had for sale on their website. And out of my excitement about the car, I decided to email the website to tell them I wanted to test drive the car. But that wasn't far enough. I decided that I would call them, even though I knew they were closed because it was nighttime. I'd call them and leave them a message that I wanted to test drive the car. I could hardly sleep that night, and I was looking forward to the next morning to go and test drive the car. So, when I got up the next day, I got on the phone and I thought, gosh, when do they open? And they didn't open till, I think, 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. It was the weekend. And I called anyway. It was like 10 minutes to when they opened, and I called. The phone rang and rang and rang. Nobody answered. So I called again. The phone rang and rang, and finally a guy picked up the phone. And I said, hey, I know you guys aren't open yet. My name's Stefan, and I wanted to test drive that Toyota Venza you guys had. I'm really interested in it. Please don't let anybody else reserve a spot to test drive it this morning, because I'll be right over to test drive it. So the gentleman on the other end of the phone, he said that he was there just opening up the dealership. And he said, yeah, no problem. You know, you can come in and test drive it. You know, don't worry about that. We open it, you know, I can't remember, it was 9 or 10. And I lived about 8 minutes from there. And he said, but how did you know about the Venza? He said, we just posted it on our website last night at midnight. And when he said that, I remembered the voice that spoke to me the prior day in my head. And it said, tonight at midnight, you'll be sitting on your bed, open up your laptop, and you'll find your car. Anyway, I thought, gosh, that's very interesting. Well, I hung up with the gentleman on the phone, and I drove over, saw the car, I test drove it. I knew this was the car for me. It had what I needed. It had a hatchback. It was a fairly large interior capacity. I could put material in it, my tools and everything. Got decent gas mileage. And it was cool looking. I'd never seen a Toyota Venza before. I guess they stopped making the Toyota Venza at some point between 2009 and 2015, I think, or 16. Not because there's anything wrong with the car, but because it was, the story I was told was it was selling so fast that the other division of Toyota, Lexus, their other model that competed with it wasn't selling as well as they wanted, so they discontinued the Venza. At any rate, there's another part that comes into the story. Now, about 5 years before this, I've first of all, I've done a lot of experimentations with consciousness and the universe and so forth. And one of the experiments that I decided to start, which is still ongoing, is I sat down with a piece of paper one day and I talked to the universe and I said, I'm going to pick a number, which was 67. And I command you, universe, to let this number show up or make this number show up in my life whenever it wants and wherever it wants. And it has done so. I can't even count the number of times I'm following a car and the license plate has a 67. And many times when I leave my house and come back home from work, I may have followed 5 or 10 cars during that day. And sometimes every single one of them has a 67 on the license plate. My client that I'm working for now, the license plate of their main car is 67. My client's phone numbers, their addresses, usually have a 67 in it. I lived at a place that the number was 67. 67 is constantly showing up when I buy groceries or I weigh something at the grocery store. It comes out 0.67 pounds, or the total on my groceries come out to some 67, like it's $67 or this change is 67. It's just constant. It's not something I try to control. It's not something I try to think about. It just shows up. And the reason why I did that was it was like inserting a code in the matrix, if you will, of this reality. And by inserting that code and allowing it to float around and show up whenever it wants, I have no desire to control it. It's fun to observe. I've bought lottery tickets. So many times the number is 67. And, why would it be that when I just buy a ticket that's a random number generator, why would it give me the number 67? I mean, it could do it sometimes 3 or 4 times in a row. And I don't ever think about 67 when I buy a ticket. It's just there. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You can say, well, it's random. And I would agree, there is randomness, but there is also intention. So 67 shows up here and there. I just notice it when it does. It shows up actually quite a lot. I'll be watching a movie or a video, and somehow 67 will come up. It's pretty funny. Anyway, so I'm sitting down with the guy at the dealership after I test drove the car. I'm giving him, I just bought the car cash because at the time I was able to do that. I just gave him the cash for the car. He gave me the paperwork. And I had never once even looked at the mileage on the car. Never once. Never even thought about it. As he handed me the paperwork for the car, the receipt and the paperwork for the title and all that stuff, I looked down at it, and the mileage on the car was 67676. It had 67,000 miles on it and 676. So 67,676. And I still have the receipt of that in the visor of my car. Now that to me was just icing on the cake, because the voice told me when I would find the car for whatever reason. And then the number 67 was incorporated into that experience. Like, you want to see how the universe works? You want to see the universe acknowledge that it knows what you're thinking and feeling? Well, Here, we're going to do this. We're going to talk to you directly, and then we're going to make the mileage match your favorite number, 67. Don't ask me why that's my favorite number. It just is. I think it was my old football number. Whatever. It doesn't matter. For some reason along the line, I thought, 67 is kind of a cool number. And then when I sat down and wrote that out, I just chose it. It could have been any number. It could have been 19, it could have been 8, it could have been 44, it could have been, whatever. Oh, and this is an interesting experience. So many years ago, it was about around the time of this car, when I bought this car. It was after I bought this car, actually, because I used this car, I believe. No, it was the Honda. I traveled in the Honda that I had prior to this car with a friend to the coast, and on the way to the coast, and there were some kids in the car, we all went around and we were talking about, I was telling them about the 67. And everybody shared their favorite number. So my friend from out of town said their favorite number was 44. I said, oh, that's cool. I like 44. That's a cool number. So when we got to the beach, we parked in a parking lot. Now, Oregon plates only have 3 numbers, but in the parking lot, there was a car from an out-of-state license. I don't remember what state it was from, but it had 4 numbers. And the numbers on the plate was 67 and 44, 6744, from left to right. Now, I was driving, so my favorite number was 67. My friend's number was passenger in the front seat. My other kid was in the back. So it was like lined up the same way. Not that that had any bearing, but my point was that when we pulled up to the parking lot, the car that we had to park next to, there was only one parking space, had those 4 numbers, 67, 44. So why did the voice talk to me? Now, one time it saved my life, and on another occasion, possibly. But this time it just told me which car to buy. Now, it turns out that the car that I bought was exactly what I needed. I mean, there's nothing I can't do with that car that I wanted to do as far as how I use it. But how that affected me personally was that my own awareness and consciousness relaxed and opened up, realizing, there are mysteries in this life that we don't possibly understand or can explain. And I guess we're not alone. There's some mechanism or some consciousness that is observing us and keeping track, or at least going along for the ride with us. And as I began to research people who hear voices, and I did this for my own sanity first, because I wanted to know that I wasn't going crazy. I mean, I don't remember the first time that I heard a voice, but when I was 11, I heard a voice that saved my life, most likely. When I was a teenager, that voice on that rock cliff saved my life, most likely, as that rock headed towards my head. And then one time when I was out in a sailboat that was half full of water, that's engine was barely running, in a storm with 30 and 40-foot swells, 50 miles off a coast, that voice answered me when I asked, am I going to die today? And it was right. No, you're not going to die today. And that 11-hour trip that should have been 2 hours finally ended by us being rescued by some fishermen in a tiny canoe that we used through the night to get to a small island. From which we are eventually returned to the mainland. But that voice answered me when I asked it a question. Now, I've purposely asked to have a response many times. Got nothing back. Sorry, we got other things to do. Just not up for it today. But for some reason on that particular day when I was frustrated with looking for a car, it decided to pipe in. Maybe out of its own exhaustion of me trying and trying and trying and trying again to find a car over 6 weeks, it finally said, you know, tonight, you're going to find your car. Don't worry about it. So this is the end of episode 2, Hearing Voices. If you've heard a voice, you've had some sort of experience with whether a voice is within you or outside of your body that contacts you for some reason or gives you instructions on what to do or something like that, think about maybe getting a hold of me through my channel What Was Seen or the Coherence Path, emailing me, and maybe we can either talk over the phone through the interview, Skype, or whatever else possibilities are out there now, I'm not sure. Or an in-person interview if you're in the Portland area, or I'm lucky enough to win the lottery and I can just travel around the world interviewing people. Gosh, that'd be a fun job. But let me know. That's the purpose of this channel, is to investigate consciousness and things that happen, that some of which we can't explain, and other things that just make practical sense, like making good choices. That's how we learn and how we grow. And eventually, hopefully, if we become loving and kind people, regardless of what we've experienced, done, or believed, that we grow up. Hopefully we grow up, because that's why we're here. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks you for listening. And I look forward, hopefully, to speaking to some of you on my channel. I appreciate it.